The NHL playoff picture is still up in the air, but here in Winnipeg, fans are confident the arena will echo with the sound of white noise again.
Let's go! Go, Jets, go! Winnipeg is back in the big leagues and over the moon.
Welcome back to the landing strip. After the Winnipeg Jets defeat the Buffalo Sabres 3-2 in overtime. And here at Top Line Media, me and Mikey are ready to break this down. This show is presented by From Financial, who we are stoked to have on board. Mikey, how you doing tonight?
Vibes are going to be a little bit better tonight. It's always nice after a win. It's been a tough week, couple weeks to be a Jets fan. So it's great to get a win. I'm sure we've got a lot still to talk about in this one, and we're going to get into it with everybody in the chat and our phone calls and everything. So I'm excited.
And I gotta say, both YouTube and Twitch know me way too well. I could tell the vibes of this show are going to be something I enjoy. But even on a night where it's not the prettiest of W's, we got to start this show a certain way, right? It's been a while since we've gotten the vibes going in here.
Let's go.
Let's go. God, it feels good to hear that guy going off. But yeah, an interesting one in this game and some funny comments early that are going to lead into some discussion points over on YouTube. Jeff Kabeel says, quick, get on the plane before Logan gets on. Turd Ferguson says, well, Nick, that performance must have settled your nerves. No, with a laughing face. Kevin Kowaluk says, I got to say, at the risk of being labeled a poopy pants, I wasn't real happy with that performance. A win is a win, but yikes. And I got to say, Kevin, you might have come to the right show because I think I'm labeled that way on certain nights. And I know this isn't necessarily the prettiest games, though it still is a win for this team to get back on track. We'll dive into all of that. Turd also says, headphones over the hood. Nick is so gangster. We're trying something new. And Joyce's notice is by saying format change, high production value on this program. Shout out Mikey for adding some Winnipeg flair to the look tonight. I appreciate that. Rahul's already talked about the offense stinks right now. Missing Ehlers and an injured Scheifele does not bode well. And some more Stanley content as DB_204 talks about the new president of the Big Stan fan club, Nick Lynham. I will definitely not be leading that charge, but there's a lot to talk about in a game like this. Mikey, what stands out to you on this night?
So I want to jump right actually where Rahul started there with Scheifele being injured. It felt like there was a concentrated effort both on the broadcast and from all the media guys on social media tonight to point out how much better Scheifele looks. Oh, Scheifele's back. Scheifele's so much better. Scheifele's back. Scheifele's back. Haven't seen him move so well. Did you see that yourself watching the game tonight? Did it look like Scheifele is back and rolling to you?
I thought that was the best game the top line's played in a couple weeks, personally.
Yeah. But just for his his injury and his kind of being able to do the things. How do you think he looked tonight? Because it seemed like everybody was pretty big on Scheifele being right back to it.
I don't think we saw peak Scheifele, but I did see some progress as far as some of the board battles won. Some of the looks, the passes looked more crisp. Like a couple times during this injury, we've seen him get the puck late to someone. So I think there's been some signs. You weren't seeing it, eh?
Not as much. It didn't feel like it was as drastic of a different game today as it was from the last couple. I thought Velarde was locked in on this one. And as we've kind of seen before, as Gabe Velarde goes, so does that top line. So I thought it was maybe a little bit more Velarde than Scheifele, but that's why I wanted to see what you saw. And chat, let us know if you think Scheifele looked right back to it tonight, or if you kind of saw what I saw and didn't seem that big of a change.
I would agree with you wholeheartedly on the Velarde front. I thought that was the most engaged, especially physically, we've seen Gabe Velarde. On that forecheck. He did cause some havoc. He was creating a lot of turnovers. We know he's skilled in front of the net. And that play, I want to say it was the first period. And this has become a vintage trademark Gabe Velarde situation where he's net front on that power play and he gets the puck. And because he is so skilled and he can score from that in tight, he's a threat to both get to the net and score or to create offense. And he does that spin move he does. Gets it to Perfetti in the low slot. Perfetti's wide open, doesn't bury. But I thought there was a lot of good in Gabe Velarde's game, and I'm glad you brought that up. I thought he was like the most standout player on that group, but I did feel like this was a game where the Winnipeg Jets top line, and I do have my issues with them. I thought this was a game where they were the one line creating consistent opportunities, and you do want to see that from them. It also was a game where they were also letting up some quality looks, which is kind of an expectation with that group. I mean, just even looking at the numbers, we know it's a high event group when they're probably at their best. 17-12 in shot attempts, going both ways at 5-on-5 in only 13 minutes. So clearly a lot was going on for that group, but more in the positive column. I do think it was a step forward. And I mean, good. It's probably good for them too. Kyle Connor gets off the schneid on that 5-on-3, which honestly wasn't the prettiest of 5-on-3s until that goal sneaks in. But Scheifele finds Connor through the cross seam there. Connor sneaks one through UPL. I'm sure that's going to bring some good vibes into his game. So I think if you're looking for like reasons to buy into that group building off something, I think there was a lot of signs in this one. Now with the rest of the lineup at times, I'm not so sure that's there. But if you're someone that thinks that this is the way to go with the Winnipeg Jets and the top line is going to turn it around, and as soon as they turn around, we're back to being a wagon, you're probably happy with this game and what you saw from that group. As you're going to hear on the podcast we recorded last night, we did about an hour 20, really looking at that last game against the Blues and talking about the bigger picture of how the Winnipeg Jets construct their lineup and their roster composition. That's coming out tomorrow. It's about an hour 20 conversation. It dives a lot more into that conversation. But if you're someone that was just looking for a good feeling from that top line, I do think tonight gave you it.
Yeah, absolutely. On a night where you got a lot of meh from the other lines, your top line was your best line. And that's what we've been just kind of begging for a while now. But we need it consistently, right? It can't just be one night and then back to sleep again for a while. If they can maintain that kind of play and that level of engagement night in and night out, that's everything you want from that top line. That's perfect. We need to see it at a consistent level before I'm ready for it to go, okay, this is it.
Joyce says there's a saying in baseball, the ball will always find you. If you put a player in a bad position, they are scared, tied, or not up to the task, the ball will always find you. That seems to be the Jets' luck lately, especially with the injuries and bad roster decisions. See Logan Stanley, and that is an interesting aspect to how some of this works out, and I'm always love to talk a little ball whenever you can on a night like this. So that's an interesting little theory. Zuch also comes in with the hammer. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. This is Buffalo, so of course the top line looks good. And hey, this isn't me saying I'm saying the Winnipeg Jets got to keep going to it, but I thought this was a night where they were better. And DB_204 takes me to a combo I did want to get to in this game. And since we're talking about the forwards early, let's go there. DB_204 agrees with us here, saying L1 gave the Sabres fits all night. Everyone else, meh. Lambo doesn't look ready. And we saw going into the third period, Lambo and Iafallo switch lines to try and get something going in this 2-2 game. Yep. Mikey, I want to hear your thoughts on the switch and your thoughts on Lambert so far, because I got some thoughts on this topic.
Yeah, it was a rougher night for Lambert, starting with taking that puck to the inside of the thigh or the inside of the leg early on, right? So yeah, it wasn't his best game tonight. I don't know if I'm ready to say he's not ready. I think the only way we're going to kind of find out what he's got is to get him playing. It's unfortunate that he's got to be tossed right into, those higher minutes right off the hop due to injury and not being able to find kind of where he fits. But I don't. I'm not ready to toss him back down to the Moose yet. I want to keep seeing what we've got and see if we can develop into, that a third line center is kind of where I envision him. Being on a third line that can score and maybe chip in.
Yeah, so I think this might surprise some people, but I actually really liked Arniel going to the Lambert-Iafallo switch in a 2-2 game here. Yeah. The top line was the only one going, and we do have to have a bigger conversation. And I know me and you get into it in the podcast that's coming out tomorrow about the Lowry line, but I thought this was another really tough night for that group, which has been the identity for this team for so long. And this 10-game stretch, we talk about it. I don't want to dive into too much depth so you're hearing the same conversation back-to-back days, but this was another tough game for Lowry's line. I talked about when Ehlers went down on that post-game show that I like Iafallo, Perfetti, and Nemestikov as a line. They did well as a group last year. They seem to gel a bit better, and it's the kind of line you're looking at as a third line. It's like if you're expecting that to be a top 6 line in the NHL, I think you're nuts. But I think that's the kind of quality third line. So they need more from both the Adam Lowry line and the Mark Scheifele line during this Ehlers injury where you're missing a key offensive piece. I think we got it from the first line tonight. Don't think we got it from the Lowry line. Obviously, Adam Lowry comes up big in overtime with the second effort. Him and Josh Morrissey, both with some big effort plays late in the shift there to put this one over. And you like to see that from the Winnipeg Jets. And Al Camino kind of nails this, and this is something me and Jordan talk about more often than I'd like to admit. But Al Camino on that line says, Lowry and Appleton MIA after 25 games. I'm shocked. And I mean, it is kind of something we do see from that group around this time of year. Normally, I think it's a little later into December, but they kind of are emblematic of the Winnipeg Jets as a team when you look at their hot streaks and their down periods. And it is kind of interesting that they really coincide over the last year and a bit. And when they really dry up, it gets harder and harder for this team.
Yeah, that group is all gas, no brakes. And sometimes you run out of gas, right? That just, that's kind of the way that it happens. And we see it quite often. Yeah. Around this time, usually a little bit later, like you point out, but it's not uncommon for them to burn out before getting that break and then coming back in, hopefully finding another hot streak. But it kind of, again, like we touched on in the episode coming up, they just need more from the other lines to give that line a little bit of a breather. I think we'll go a long way in getting this successful going forward.
Yeah, on Brad Lambert, I think you see moments right now where you're like, oh, this might turn it over. Oh, this might work out. And it seems like him and Perfetti would find each other for a nice little play in both these games, but it was not enough over the entire course of what we're seeing. And I do wonder about whether he truly is ready. I want to still go there until we get Ehlers back and really get a run out of it. But I do think there are some questions there, which obviously this was a big week, and it's going to continue to be a big week for the Jets in finding out where Lambert's at right now. We've talked about the reasons why that would be important for him to be ready, but I do think it's there's been flashes of that skill set that gets people really excited, including myself, but I do think it's been a tougher look for him over the course of both games so far.
Well, he's not going to get any better sitting in the press box.
We'll get into him there shortly. JPEX29 says, how nice was UPL set up with those jerseys though? I gotta say that classic Buffalo setup.
So good.
It's good. Who I saw one of I think it was Manuk on Twitter was talking about guys he thinks of when he sees those jerseys. Who's the Sabre you think about when you see that setup?
Oh, Hasek. No question.
Yeah, you got to go with the GOAT. No, that's a great answer. For me, it's Maxim Afinoganov.
Ooh.
Every time I see those jerseys, all I think about is Maxim Afinoganov dangling someone at center ice and going to do some stupid shit. So, fair answer on the GOAT.
Yeah, I picture it upside down as Hasek is upside down trying to make a save, Yeah,
I could see that image in my head right now with the pads up in the air as he's lying down. Yeah. Turd Ferguson says Rob Ray. Jeff Kabeel says Matthew Barnaby.
Very nice.
Al Camino says Mike Pekka. Zuch also says Afinoganov.
Miroslav Satan.
With Hasek.
Mark 40144. That's a good one.
Yeah, we got some good names here. Miroslav Slachan. D-Labs mentions the half jersey tuck, which was legendary with that type of setup. We got the old Mayday calls going with Doug Henderson and Tico Napoli over on YouTube. Some good memories there, but also on the Sabres. You've been bugging me lately about like the United States team having a couple of my favorites.
Yep.
The Buffalo Sabres, man. As much as that team's stuck in the mud, Mr. Benson there.
Yep.
My boy.
He was chippy tonight.
Very chippy. You know, I like a small guy that's chippy, and that was something that stood out when he was a Winnipeg Ice. I'll never forget. Obviously, that draft year was all about Connor Bedard, and rightfully so. And going to watch those two heads up, it was like Benson had a chip on his shoulder about Bedard being higher than him, and they both grew up in Vancouver, right? So he probably grew up with that. Yeah. Every time they'd play here, I swear Benson would be going to just try and stir it up with Bedard. And I just love to see that. Obviously, it's been a bit of a slower start for him this year. But guy I like. But the other one, I tweeted this out. God, would I love to be putting number 89 on the plane and taking him home with the Winnipeg Jets. Alex Tuch, man.
Yeah.
Talk about a guy that I think would really fit this top six group. A little hard because he's not a center. But just the style of that player, whew.
Oh, the fit on there. Can you imagine putting him on a line with a Brad Lambert and Cole Perfetti?
I'm aiming higher at this point. I gotta say, you want to know my take on Perfetti and Lambert at this point, and we'll see with Perfetti because I do think he'll get there. I think you look at both of those as third liners with this team trying to compete, and I look at Tuch as a top six guy.
Ooh, I like it.
But that is an idea. But Alex Tuch, obviously last year, and I had kind of talked about this on the podcast, leading into the deadline, Buffalo's still stuck in the mud. And I was hearing whispers early on in that trade deadline week that the Winnipeg Jets were trying something bigger. And they ended up with Tyler Toffoli the morning of the deadline. Yeah. I was led to believe around that time that they were really trying for Alex Tuch. And if he were to become available, I would love them to finish that off. That's all I got to say there.
That's really like keep on your bingo cards, everybody. Keep an eye on Alex Tuch come deadline.
Would be a fun one. Another interesting angle on this game. There was a first rounder from the 2016 draft who is 6'7", who puts his team on the board first. Uh-huh. Unfortunately, it was not Logan Stanley in this one. It was Tage Thompson, who obviously we get to talk about Kyle Connor's release and how cool it is to get to watch that. Watching Tage Thompson's release today, you can see how he beats goaltenders so often. That guy's got a real sneaky release with how I thought he was going to beat Hellebuck. I want to say it was short side, far post in the third period, the way it came off his heel. Yeah. It's fun to watch a team like that who's got some talented players, and you can't help but wonder with how things are going down if they are going to be somebody that becomes a trade partner down the road.
You know, so I like to spend time on the social media pages of the opposing team during the games just to get their sense and their vibes. And man, the Sabres fans are real pissed off at Owen Power. So you know, I know you talked about him being a potential trade target earlier on the landing strip. You know, if they're tired of him over there already, we can go out and grab Tuch and Power and just be done our deadline shopping right away.
Jesus Christ, talk about putting yourself into a spot for a real run here.
If they want to rebuild, right? If things aren't going the way that they want it to be going, why not? Let's make a deal, Buffalo.
Sticking on the forward train, and we'll get to some of the D talk because obviously we saw a couple changes on the D pairs. Yep. We're seeing a bit of a run on the third pair that's leaving a veteran out. Though, here's an interesting question and an interesting discussion point. Turd Ferguson says, I'm starting to run out of gas defending Fets. Trade chip at this point. Talk me down, Nick, or agree? What do you have to say to that, Mikey? I'll let you start.
Yeah, it's all right. You can step back from the edge, my friend. It's all right. We got you. Technically there's nobody untouchable if the ad is big enough coming back the other way. But I don't think I think it's way too early to be thinking about moving on from him now. It's coming still. Everything's coming in the right way. The points and things will come as well. We just have to stabilize that line and get him some line mates that are going to play in a style that's going to benefit him and themselves. So, nope, I think we're okay. It's all right, Turd. We got you. Come back, buddy.
Jay Pick says keep Fetz for the car washes.
Absolutely.
So the thing about me, and I know I'm a big defender of Cole Perfetti, wanted him signed long term. Still think he's a future part of this Winnipeg Jets team. I'm also someone that doesn't see an untouchable outside of Connor Hellebuyck and probably Josh Morrissey in Winnipeg. I just don't think the Winnipeg Jets have any assets that reach that level where you wouldn't trade them for the right piece. Like, I wouldn't trade. I got into a bit of an argument with one of the fans on the Islanders, I believe it was, where I'd kind of talked up Brock Nelson as a potential Jets target. And this Islanders fan had said Perfetti or Velarde. And you're not trading a guy like that for a rental or a non-impact player. If you're going to trade a Cole Perfetti, which again I'm open to, because it would have to mean adding a core level piece. And what's the one thing I've been saying the Winnipeg Jets still need? So if you can get a top level right-handed D or a top level 1-2C, I think you have to consider it. Other than that, I'm not panicking with where his game's at. This is still one of the top 6 points per 60 guys on the Jets still, on a team that we're talking about struggling to generate offense. I know he hasn't been, but I think Al makes a good point here, and you're going to hear me talk about this topic a little bit more from a team perspective on the episode tomorrow. But I also do think it's hard to, Al Camino says, hard to evaluate anyone when lines haven't changed in 3 years. I do think that's a part of the dynamic that you're seeing with certain Winnipeg forwards not maybe being as successful. So again, I'd want to see a run there where, again, I've talked up the idea. I think he'd be a great Kyle Connor lineman, and I think Ehlers and Velarde make more sense as wingers. I want to see what that kind of thing looks like before trading a player at its lowest. But again, if you can go get a big piece that could put this team over, I don't think anyone's untouchable, whether Lambert, Yeager, Perfetti, Hanla, like anybody like that. Hell, there's even actual vets I would trade to make moves. So that's where I stand when it comes to trades. I think everybody has a price. Everyone has a certain value. And if he's the piece that needs to move to go actually get one of those 2 holes, hey, I'm open-minded to anything like that personally. That's just how I see those conversations.
Yeah, I totally agree. If you're going to be able to find that, right-handed top D that's coming in with term, and the piece that the team wants back, they're dead set on is Cole Perfetti. Yeah, you make that move and you fill out the rest of the trade. But I'm not moving him for a rental. That's a cost-effective player that you have right now and you still have control of, even on the short-term deal. So, yeah, no, it's all right, Turd. We got you. You're not going off the edge yet.
Yeah, so I see in the chat that the conversation is starting to move to defense a little bit. Matt Hyman says, I feel a little misled by the landing strip, but I will continue to watch anyways. That's good. That's good. I've been waiting for someone to make a joke like that during one of the live streams. We got a lot of it when we were telling people what we were going to call this show. So I'm glad Matt picked up on that. On the topic we were just talking about, Kevin Kowalczyk had kind of said, I had a chat with my wife today about Brady Tkachuk. I would trade everyone for him, no question. And that's kind of, it's all tying into one of those combos I had, I want to say 3 games ago on the landing strip, where I think there's a bunch of teams with core pieces that are going to shake loose because those teams haven't taken the steps. And I just wonder if Chevy gets to that point.
Yep. I think we're going to see it, a lot of the speculation and the rumors and things start picking up quite a bit after the Christmas break.
And I see Choices agrees with what I kind of said there, and Al Camino had said on YouTube. Hard to really get a feeling for how good 91 can be when there's no viable second line center and plays third line plays more. Yeah. And I think those are all fair reasons too. Like, I still think the upside on Cole Perfetti is more than worth investing in. And as you're going to see, there's ways around this that I think if you reinvent what the Winnipeg Jets lineup could be better off for everyone.
Yep.
I encourage you to listen tomorrow because we get into a lot of that. Let's start moving to the D.
Choices TK points out that any requirement for a deal is that they have to take back number 64. So.
And on that topic, Doug Henderson says, I think Stanley is going to get his wish and get traded out of town. Are we going to touch on Logan Stanley here before getting into the rest of the D?
Yeah, we may as well start with Stanley.
What did you think of Logan tonight?
Oh, he was showing us, leaving a statement on the. Oh, sorry, Bill, get away from the microphone. Sorry, Bill from Trenskona broke in for a second. It was a very typical Logan Stanley game. You saw all of the bad, you saw a little bit of the good, and look, he had a fight. That was cute. That was, God, you could see it on his face, though. He did not want to be there. I feel for the guy, like from a personal standpoint, because he's been put into this role and this like mold from fans that I don't think he really is a part of. I don't think he wants to be a big bruising brawler, throwing fights and things like that. But he was trying tonight. I will give him that. He was definitely trying tonight. It still hasn't sold me that he is an everyday NHL player. Yeah, but it's, that it is what it is. He definitely was visible tonight. What did you think?
Yeah, I think you kind of nail it. Like, this is a dude that keeps just getting thrown out there by people, and it's not really his choice. And it's gotten pretty ugly in Winnipeg. Like, even to the point I kind of feel for the guy. If you go read any of the Jets social media posts over the last few days, I've never seen social media be this much in unison. Like, the crowd has definitely turned in Winnipeg when it comes to Logan Stanley. And what I saw out of his game today, I actually didn't mind his start in St. Louis last game, and then it fell apart. What I saw today is I didn't see. I'm having trouble pulling up a puck battle he won. I'm having trouble thinking of a zone exit pass that was actually tape to tape that the winger didn't have to struggle with. I'm thinking about that goal where he doesn't even get a stick on his guy to go up 2-1 for Buffalo. I'm thinking about how I was excited that he got a misconduct after fighting, because it meant I didn't have to watch him for another 15 minutes. I mean, we watched a fight today between a 28-year-old and a 26-year-old with a combined 230 games. What is the fucking point of either of those guys playing in the NHL?
Yep.
And it's just one of those things, like, the org's not going to quit it. Like, we could talk about it till we're blue in the face.
Yeah.
I think if you look at the tape today, it's another tough one. Unless the people down at Canada Life Center change anything, it's like I could say the same things over and over again. I see the whole market at this point sees it. It's just like, what do I say on behalf of the market at this point? I feel like it's all been said. I feel like, honestly, for him personally, it would probably be a benefit to get out of the city at this point with just the publicity going on. And I just think the organization finally being able to take that step and move on from something that they were convinced was going to pan off that didn't, because maybe it starts a little rotation of them realizing, hey, we were wrong on this. Maybe we've been wrong on some other things, which I know is probably crazy to think. But I just think there's so many reasons for this to just, like, get a clean break. Obviously, they're quite happy with what they're getting from Fleury, who's playing in the top four now, who played in overtime. Again, I'm more interested in seeing what Ville Heinola can do after a run of games, who I thought has had his ups and downs since being called up. I like the puck movement. One little play that sticks out for me that gets me excited about a guy like Ville Heinola, and no one's probably going to talk about this. It leads to nothing, but it's just an example of his skill set that's going to open up things for the Winnipeg Jets. There's a play in the neutral zone in the second period in this game where there's a battle on the boards between Kupari and someone on the Sabres. Puck squirts out to Heinola. And, a lot of, especially hulking, grinder type D-men are just going to throw that puck back into that battle or just try and get the red line and dump it in, right?
Yep.
Ville Heinola takes that puck and attacks the center of the ice, even though he's in the neutral zone. Draws two checkers for him, which allows him to softly move it back to Kupari, who gets a zone entry, and it's going to create more opportunities for Winnipeg. When it comes to defending the blue line, I do think Heinola is backing in too far, and we've talked a lot about the neutral zone and being able to press being such a big part of this team's success. So that's an area I think he does need to get stronger at. But when it comes to the puck movement, he does look a lot more confident to me as this 3 or 4 games has gone on. It's the little games in the reads in games to attack and create openings for your teammates rather than just throw things back, where I think I look at Logan Stanley and I feel like when he gets in trouble, he's throwing the puck back into a problem, which creates a problem for the next guy. Yep. I see Heinola as actually solving problems for his teammates and creating opportunity. Now it's just, hey, the blue line thing, let's get some gap up a little bit. And you're seeing him try. He tried to throw a couple hits on some zone entries. Yep. We know he's a smaller sized defenseman. I just think as far as the hockey IQ and understanding the game, Heinola brings more for me than 64. And I just look at this decor right now, and I get giving Colin Miller maybe a breather if he didn't like a game. I think he should be like the number 5 stable in this group.
I'm real curious, what Colin Miller did or said to offend the coaching staff so much that he's been sitting these games. Because from an eye test standpoint, watching him play, I didn't see anything egregious that would lead me to go, he doesn't get the system. He's doing things on his own. He's leaving guys out to dry. From a numbers standpoint, there's nothing that points to, a massive hole from his game either. I'm just not sure why he's not getting those minutes in outside of they just want to play Stanley. It's weird. Heinola, the big kind of takeaway I've had from his last few games is that the breakouts have been good. He's been able to help kind of push forward in a way the Jets have been really lacking. And I just kept screaming at the TV going, don't move back. Because he's just, the pressure and then the skating backwards. We've talked about how they need to be aggressive in the neutral zone for that system to work well. But he's starting to pick that up finally now. Like you said, we actually saw a couple times where he was attempting those. I just want to sit him down and play as much Toby Enstrom film for him as I possibly can. I don't know if anybody's got Matt Prefontaine's number, but make sure he's got Heinola locked in a room with all of that tape for the next couple of weeks, because if you get him playing in that kind of way, he'll be ridiculously successful. And, if we can maybe get him back on his strong side, it'd be nice, but that might be wishful thinking.
Yeah, and Choices really agrees with how you said it. And this is something I've seen kind of take off on social media a bit, so I do want to touch on this with Stanley, and we'll kind of move on from here. Choices says exactly what the Jets want him to be is so contrary to the way he wants to play. You can't blame him at this point. Teams should know better by now. Yep. And this is one thing I've found interesting on social media that I think is really actually unfair to Logan Stanley as a hockey player. A lot of the vitriol has kind of built up on the fact that he's not an aggressive player for being 6'7". Now we see him fight tonight, all that, but he's not. He throws maybe a hit a game kind of thing. If you go back to him as a prospect, that's never who he was, even at junior. That I actually feel for the guy that he was miscast as who he was as a player and tried to be forced into something that he's never been. And you can't just, especially when you're looking at the whole being aggressive and a fighter and stuff, that's not something that's just learned. That's like an innate thing in somebody. If you're a born killer, a born competitor like that, I don't think you learn that.
No.
And it just was never going to happen for him. So I do look at Stanley becoming what he's become, and that's just not a quality player, that the whole market sees it, as a bit of an indictment on how the team saw him and what they were looking for compared to what he had to offer. And it's unfortunate for him.
Yeah, they wanted Dustin Byfuglien 2.0, and they got, Tyler Myers light. That's just kind of the way that it is. And it's just frustrating because he's, like you said, that's not who he is. It's never who he was. And to expect it out of him now doesn't make any sense.
Zooch40 says they want him to be Brendan Dillon when he's not. And the name that keeps popping up to me was Jamie Alexiak. Yep. But it's that kind of thing, and it's just not going to happen. Continuing on the D conversation, though, because DB takes us to the next spot I want to talk about. We talked about the third pair. DB204 brings up 44 played almost 30 minutes tonight. 4 played 28. We can't keep the protected minutes for 1/3 of the decor. And that's the part of this that also adds in and becomes a bit of a problem. I think Colin Miller is a guy you could trust in 15, 16 minutes compared to you don't know what you're going to get out of 64 and 14 right now. And that has impacts up the lineup when it comes to 44 and Neil Pionk, who I don't love what's been happening since Samberg went in his game. I saw the chaos all over, especially in the D zone today, even beside Josh Morrissey. So you're asking Josh Morrissey to now play more minutes in a more chaotic defensive zone. This team might need to go get a D-man sooner than later, depending on the next update on Dylan Samberg. Because, you're not going to survive with 44 playing 30 minutes, then heading off to the Four Nations, then all this. Like, it's going to wear a guy down. And you saw it even tonight. The goal that comes back is not something you see from Josh Morrissey often, where he just leaves his guy wide open alone in the slot.
Yep.
Comes back, but...
Yeah, it was a mental, like, you're going to have those mental gaps when you're playing half of the entire game. Like, it's not sustainable to keep doing that. And they loaded up the top pair tonight because they had to. I do want to say, I do like that they finally moved DeMello down to the other pairing, gave him less minutes, let him catch his breath. I think it's exactly what they should have done. So I want to shout out the coaches on that one. That was the right call, I think. And again, though, it just further highlights how much, one, Dylan Samberg means to this group. Unquestionably, their second most important defenseman. And how much they need to add a top four defenseman, and quickly.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough slog here. I still do think they can get through it, but I don't think they can get through it chasing size and having uncertainty in that third pair. Like DB kind of talks about on... We can't keep protecting minutes for a third of the decor. And when you're trying to do this whole 26-year-old development thing where he's not going to get better if he's in the press box, and you're actually trying to, in a key development stage with a 23-year-old in Ville Heinola, you're going into every night as a bit of a crapshoot, which is interesting that on one hand, it's interesting that Arniel has the risk tolerance to go to two players like that in the third pair. On the other hand, I think it's really silly given what's happened to losing Samberg, Dylan DeMello still struggling through it, and just having such a question mark as your third group. I don't know what the issue with Arniel and the staff is with Colin Miller, but it did come across my mind this tonight that Arniel was the D coach that sat Miller post acquiring him and then threw Stanley in for Schmidt 2 games before the playoffs. So clearly this is something Arniel's interested in, and I do think we're going to see it for a little longer. I'm hoping after tonight, with how much 64 and 14 ended up playing in their own zone and how much a lot of the decision making wasn't good again, shakes something, but I'm not convinced we see it.
Yeah, unfortunately, the only change we'd probably end up getting if Colin Miller does come in is they'll take out Ville Heinola to put him on the right side with Logan Stanley. So, it's one of those frustrating things where it's one step forward, one step back, one step forward, one step back. It's funny that you brought up last season. I was going to ask you about that because in the offseason, again, it was all right, Colin Miller's on this team. He didn't play much at the right. And yeah, who was in charge of the D? Oh, right, Scott Arniel. And here we are again mid-season, and no real reason that we've been able to kind of point out and see from like a hockey standpoint, he once again is sitting. So it's strange. It's a strange situation when it's a team needing offense. You've got a guy who can produce offense from the back end, and he's not a huge defensive liability. I don't know.
Kevin Kowalik sums up my thoughts on Miller. Miller was solid defensively, and the shot is a real weapon. No reason not to be in there for a team that can't score.
Yeah.
Lucas Trapp, if we didn't have the mic problems, Lucas, I think I'm on to you here for a second. I'm a little surprised with the Stanley negative take from you. I thought they need Stanley in this lineup because he kills penalties. How does he do that when he's the one that's taking the penalties? Kind of what I'm talking about here, Lucas. I noticed in the chat last game, you went to a Kitchener Rangers game. So my assumption was you're a big, you try and wear me down with the Stanley stuff because you would have seen him with the Kitchener Rangers. But I see even you're turning there, so maybe I had that theory wrong. I think Tikona Pauly nails it when we're looking at the D as a whole. End of the year, where you want to get to, maybe even you might even want to do better than this. Hanela DeMello is an ideal third pair with Fleury and Miller as the fourth. I think he nails that to a T.
Yeah.
At their peak.
Yeah, that would be perfect.
Which makes you assume they're acquiring a right-handed D to play beside Morrissey.
Yeah, Mackenzie.
But
Weegar.
I do. Yeah, I wish Mackenzie Weegar. I wish. I can't believe he didn't make Team Canada.
Surprising, hey? Yeah.
My thought there, like, I knew they were gonna go with a couple of defensive guys, and obviously Parayko, Armstrong, and I'm gonna, you know what, I'm gonna continue being the guy on the podcast space here that defends Colton Parayko versus the numbers a little bit. I think he has got a lot of utility left in his game. Like, I still think he'd be really good beside Josh Morrissey, and I wonder if we see that at Four Nations. But I was looking at this tournament, and a guy like Weegar, who could play a top pairing level in the NHL and play both sides in a short tournament, I thought you'd want a guy like that. But hey, surprised me.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, Lucas, I figured that might be it. Lucas says, I've never been a Stanley guy, just like riling you up. And hey, you know how to do it easily. That's for sure. Would love the Weegar idea. Don't think so. Kevin Kowalczyk says, Nik Parayko truther, damn. Okay, so he's clearly gone backwards from when they were a cup team. Like, Colton Parayko was right up there with Pietrangelo for top pairing D guys. And he's clearly gotten slower. He's had the back injuries. He's 30 plus. Like, I don't want to sound like I'm like saying, hey, let's go swing on Colton Parayko right now. That contract's a problem. His health history is a problem. But if you are all in on these next couple of years and you're not worried about the back end of this contract when a rebuild would come, I think there's some utility there. Big boy that could still skate up the ice. Mm-hmm. Physical presence. I think he would open up the game for Morrissey a little bit, which is exciting to me. Having Josh Morrissey have even more space to dazzle. And I thought he had brought his dazzling pants out for a couple of shifts there in the second. There was the one shift with the Lambert, Perfetti, Nemestikov unit where Josh Morrissey's trying to will that line to a goal.
Yep.
So I don't know if I'm too much of a Parayko truther. I just would understand if the Winnipeg Jets did it, because the other aspect of it is, with that much bad money, guess what? A rebuild would have to come in Winnipeg at some point.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, hey, let's make a bet now with a guy that still can play a little bit. And guess what? You're not going to avoid the rebuild in a couple of years.
And I mean, you can pay somebody to take 20 to 30% of that contract and retain money, and then it's fine. Then I'm going all day on I'll take Parayko on that side with Morrissey.
I think it would work. And again, it's not going to last long, and that back can go at any time. Like, there's some real risk to taking that thing on.
Yep.
But if you're going to get a top four and like he becomes the best option, I get it, man. I really do.
It's an all or nothing kind of bet, and they've got enough on the roster to start looking at some of those ideas. So yeah, I don't hate it.
Picks are making me laugh, buddy. I can't even read that one out loud. Choices TK on the topic of D and kind of needing to shore things up. You can only afford one player on D that needs to be protected. And that's kind of the thing. Both guys on the third pair need to be protected. You can make the case DeMello needs to be protected right now, and you just can't. You can make the case Pionk needs to be protected, just with their downside. So, the coaching staff has a hard duty right now, and I think you just try and simplify it, get Miller in there with Hanela. Have Stanley watch some video in the press box so you can get better at positioning or something, so you could talk yourself into him getting better, and just roll on with your best guys. That would be my suggestion for the time being.
That would be nice. It sounds a little crazy to play your best players. That's a little out there as a theory, but I guess I could be convinced.
T-Kona Pauly, I gotta say, I'd be out on Cam Fowler. Not a guy I'm overly high on. Never have been, really. And the older he's gotten, I just don't see him really move. He reminds me of, like, you'd be acquiring him to play in the top four on his offhand because he's left-handed, not right. And I just don't see the gap in what he brings. Zooch 40, really feeling it today. And I do emulate with Zooch 40 here, because this still wasn't a great game. Says, it's sad that you have to do everything right just to beat Buffalo and get a big performance from Connor Hellebuck. Overall, what are you taking coming out of this game, Mikey? What are your, This was good. This was bad. This was my concern. What are the big things standing out for you tonight?
So wins are good. That's the part to always start at, right? The wins are good. You need the points because you got to qualify for the playoffs. Mm-hmm. In terms of how they actually played, though, it wasn't that much of a difference from the losing streak. There were a few things they were able to get shots off a lot better in this one than they had. They were getting to the front of the net a lot more in this one as well. So those little things starting to come their way is positives. And like I said, as Gabe Vilardi goes, so does that top line, and that top line did what we wanted them to do tonight. I'm still worried about some of the issues on D when it comes to the selection process, when it comes to the thoughts of, who's playing and, what the Jets are missing. And when it seems like you have players who could address those holes right now in-house, and you're either leaving them up in the press box or playing them in a spot that doesn't benefit them or their line mates. So, there's some weird things still going on, but it's a talented group. They're going to win more games going forward. Way back at the very beginning of the chat, Brady Ricketts, who sounds like a really handsome guy who probably knows a lot about the Toronto Maple Leafs, pointed out that he thought it was maybe a sprained wrist for Mark Scheifele that's now starting to heal up and feel better. So if that's the case, hopefully that he is, rounding back up into a healthy Mark Scheifele and maybe a pissed off Mark Scheifele because he wasn't named to Team Canada. So if he's more, if he's going to be healthy and engaged and, Vilardi and that line is going, maybe it finally does start to give some room to the Adam Lowry line to kind of find their feet again. And the part I'm most worried about, though, are the injuries still, right? Ehlers isn't close. And I went back and I looked at Scott Arniel's comments about Dylan Samberg. He said we'll reassess in 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Not that he'll be back in 4 weeks. That we'll take it from there, I believe was the quote. So, we still probably got at least another month and a half of no Dylan Samberg. So that's still worrisome, right? So I'm happy about the win, but I'm still worried going forward. How about you?
I'm glad you brought up the Samberg thing because I did want to update that on the podcast tomorrow. I talk about Samberg only missing 4 weeks. But yeah, you're right. They're reassessing in 4 weeks, which makes way more sense when you think the break and everything. So that's my bad. I had read a tweet quickly reporting it and made that mistake. I'm going to read out some of the takeaways from the chat before diving into mine on this night. Choices says over on Twitch, they can't score and can't maintain time in the O zone and seem to be in their D zone too much. Zooch40 says big takeaway is this team is still a paper tiger and without a couple big ads won't go far in the playoffs again, having to shelter so many deep pairs and lines. T-Kona Pauly says wins are good, but not OT against non-playoff teams, not. Terry Ferguson says takeaways, if we can't get the puck out clear, this won't turn around anytime soon. Al Camino says Buffalo takes so many minors was helpful. That's what was interesting too, before I'm going to go on a little tangent here.
Yeah.
Buffalo's PK was a really interesting matchup versus Winnipeg's. We've talked a lot about how when Winnipeg's power play does get in trouble, it's typically on the zone entries. And Buffalo just backed into their zone, making that step easy. But I thought the Buffalo Sabres PK was really compact, especially on the 5-on-4s, that they really didn't give the Winnipeg Jets much on the PK, and they made them settle from stuff out wide. So I thought a little hat tip to Buffalo on the PK tonight. I was really impressed.
Yeah, and also, again, it's a testament to how much they miss Nick Ehlers on that power play.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He adds a different dimension to it that, I think they're missing right now.
As far as the speed and the support element, and he's a bit quicker on the creating side, whereas I like Perfetti in that slower moving, get the puck to the net, PP on PP2. I agree with you there. Turret also says we need some secondary scoring and a top end scoring 5-on-5. T-Kona Pauly says, LOL, reassessing in 4 weeks is never good. Lucas says, I miss Samberg so much. I've been so high on him for years, and he's really been breaking out this year. Great call. Being a Samberg guy, he's become quite the player. Honestly, we talk up him pretty highly on tomorrow's pod. I think you'll enjoy that. Al reminds people that Jets injury updates translated to English is take whatever they say and double it. So on the takeaways, leaving this one, DB. Okay, here we go. DB, you're gonna enjoy tomorrow. You're gonna enjoy tomorrow's episode because I like where DB goes here. You're gonna hear it tomorrow. We talk about this in depth. DB204 says, free Nino. Let's get him away from Lowry and Apples while they snooze until February. Put Stonehands Baron with them. Nino could ride with 91 and Nam. And I do think they got to unlock Nino Niederreiter. Again, I just don't want to have the same conversation on back-to-back nights for the audience. We dive into Nino and utilizing him different a ton on the episode we're dropping tomorrow and just reinventing what this team looks like. DB, love it. Exactly what I'm thinking. Lucas Perfetti was not back on PP2. He was still playing in Ehlers' spot as far as the power plays go. But okay, my takeaway is leaving this game. The young guys are going to take a little bit of time. I don't think Lambert's come in at the level we were maybe aspiring to. I still want to keep seeing it over the next week or two while Ehlers is gone. I don't think it's a waste of time playing him. Yep. I do think big picture, and we talk about this on the pod tomorrow, I think we're looking at maybe a third liner impacting this team this year in the long run. The Lowry line, not only are they snoozing when it comes to stone hands and not being able to create much offensively, starting to fall apart a bit too much defensively. There was a lot of quality against them, and it's just not something you're used to seeing with this group. But it also has been a stretch here where I don't know if I don't know what it is. Like, that line's been so good for so long, and then this last 7, 8, 9, 10 games-ish, it's kind of falling apart, and maybe it's just that time of year for them. But that's a big takeaway right now because I made a little thread on Twitter about this. I found I've listened to content in the market a little bit more this week, and I found the conversation really interesting around the top line. Obviously, Mark Scheifele hasn't scored, or he scored last game, but he was on a stretch of no goals in 5 games. Kyle Connor scores today for his first time in 7? Yeah. And Velarde's got 1 in 6 or whatever. So the conversation was once the Winnipeg Jets top line starts going, there'll be a threat again. And I just look at the last 10 games, and if you look at the numbers around the top line, it's exactly what they've put up over the last 2 years. Like, it's the type of stretch every 10 games that you're seeing from them over 56. But they're not getting the support or the third line that's carried that differential for the last couple of years, right? That third line's really had the positive goal differential. They've had the positive shot metrics. They've allowed the next line up to start in the O-zone. So that even when their offense would dry up, they're still productively helping the team push forward. You've seen that come to a real big standstill for that group, so much so that that's kind of become a concern for me, knowing that that's been the identity of this team. So that's a big one coming out of this. The decor, I just don't think there's any real answers for. So this next 6 weeks is going to be make or break. We heard some of the commenters talking about needing to move the puck better out of there. It's one of their biggest concerns. The net front side of it too is a concern at times, and we've seen multiple teams now break the Jets down the same way. We've been talking about that on this show. But it was also, I think, if you're looking for some positives, again, I was agreeing with the broadcast on Mark Scheifele seeming to come out of this injury or looking a step better. Played center the whole night, took draws again, back-to-back games. I thought that was a positive step, was Mark Scheifele looking stronger, Gabe Velarde really grabbing a game by the balls and trying to will a team to a win. I thought that was encouraging. And the fact Connor Hellebuck has been up to stuff. I didn't think Connor Hellebuck looked himself today. It looked awkward to me. It looked slow side to side at times to me. But for him to still carry the load on a night where it doesn't look great for him, again, you have the best in the world. He's always never going to be a concern. But those are some of the positives I still have coming out of this game. I do think this team really does need to reinvent themselves over the month of December. We really dive into some different ideas and some topics around that on the episode tomorrow.
Maybe some controversial
not a great
topics.
Win. What's that?
Maybe some controversial topics.
Maybe a couple. You got to dive into it sometimes.
You'll have to listen to it.
Yeah. My biggest takeaways is without Nick Ehlers, this team and what they create offensively is pretty inept. And Dylan Sandberg might be even more important than we realize. So some good. A lot of still tough through this stretch. We'll see where it goes this weekend with the back-to-back.
That's going to be real interesting to see how they use the lineup in the back-to-back. If we maybe see Colin Miller in one of those two games? It'll be interesting.
And DB204 says 37 made the saves when he needed to, and he did. Even almost made a save on Ryan McLeod going 5-hole cross crease and missing the net. That was pretty wild late in that one. Choices says, this is an interesting takeaway on D. And then I want to jump over to Doug Henderson trade idea. The issues on D seem to have caused a chain reaction on the team where everyone is expanding their role and trying to do too much. And I do think this was already an aspect to how this D is constructed. I mean, it's been no secret. I've even called, and it's still a hot debate, and I kind of respect both opinions in this one. I think you need both, but I've kind of had the thought that the top pairing defenseman is more important than the center for how the Jets are built right now. So I think before the Dylan Sandberg injury, we already had a guy, everybody outside Josh Morrissey playing a ring too high for their skill set. I think that's even more exposed with the Dylan Sandberg side of it. Now you have guys playing 2 pegs higher than you probably ideally want them. So that's a great point there. And Doug Henderson says the Flyers are said they're going to be sellers. What about Sanheim? And what's so interesting about the Sanheim talk now, and he makes Team Canada Manitoban, was I'm pretty positive based on the reporting around the draft. It was in the Colby Barlow draft. The Winnipeg Jets had what, number 18 overall they grabbed Barlow with? 18, 19?
18, yep.
I think. And it was just finished year one of the first year of Sanheim's $6 million plus deal, 8 years in, and he had a really bad year. And it was new management, new coaching staff, and they had thrown him out there. And there was 2 teams that were apparently close to acquiring him. And if I'm not mistaken, the deal was Nate Schmidt and number 18 for Sanheim's long-term deal. And they had 2 late firsts, and it was going to be one of those late firsts. So they had wanted to get out of the long-term money and were willing to take short-term money for it. And how great would that have looked right now?
Whew. That's a game changer. That is an absolute game changer if you added him into this lineup right now, as opposed to Nate Schmidt and whatever else you would have had to have moved.
That's the thing. There's some misses there. Al Camino, when does it drop? Need to plan my dog's walk so I can listen on the AirPods. Hoping it's done and edited and sent to us by the time we get off here. But we're gonna have it posted, right? Probably by midnight, Mikey.
Say again, sorry.
The episode that we've recorded that I gotta get a hold of Voth on. We'll probably have that posted early this morning, hey?
Oh yeah, as soon as yep, absolutely. It'll get posted as soon as we get the audio back.
Okay, so yeah, we'll have that posted by the time you're waking up in the morning. Al also says not drafting Barlow would have been a bonus in that trade. And DB says, don't tell me that, Nick. I'm I'm like 98% positive this was a shot that they had.
Yep, I have
they decided to turn down.
I have an article from that year from the Hockey Writers talking about the trade and how by making a move for Sanheim, the Jets had an opportunity to take advantage of Philadelphia's cap space. They were looking at one of either Schmidt, Pionk, or Blake Wheeler and then buying him out. Was the talk on trying to move one of those contracts back in turn with the first round picks. Yeah.
And the other reason they were motivated to move him that summer was I believe his no trade or no move kicked in on July 1. He didn't have it for the first year of the deal, and it was kicking in the next year. So it was a new management, new coach. He came off a bad year, had 7 years left at just over 6. And they were willing, if they can move up in the draft, they were willing to take short-term money for long-term money. That's what it was. Yeah. Yeah. And he had a clause kicking in on July 1 that year.
Yeah, full no trade was kicking in.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. And that was a gamble. If you go search my Twitter, I was calling for it.
Yep.
I was saying that's one you should take.
Those are the type of deals the Jets need to find.
Bet, but
yeah, it is. Although, to be fair, and to echo what Dante Violets mentioned in the chat, the Jets aren't great at evaluating defense in the NHL. They've struggled with that quite a bit, so I'm not surprised they didn't pull the trigger on that deal.
Okay, so here's my honest thoughts about why I don't think the Winnipeg Jets did it. So the one thing about the Winnipeg Jets organization, and it's brought them a lot of good, like this has been a consistent playoff team, and I think they look at that as the measure of success. I mean, 16 out of 32 teams make it, but I believe that's what most teams look at as the measure of success. And the Winnipeg Jets are very, very conservative when making deals. And the fact that they were going to be taking on 7 years of a guy coming off a down season, I think is they don't have the risk tolerance within the organization to make a bet that large.
Can I also add in?
Guess. That's my guess.
Can I also add in maybe a little bit of arrogance? They're not the ones that signed that long-term deal. He's had a bad season. They don't trust it. You know what I mean? Whereas
I don't
they're
know if
more
I call
willing
it arrogance though, because they took on Nate Schmidt in that spot. And that was a deal you never should have taken on when they took him. It is funny to look back and that was celebrated.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, absolutely. It was at the time. Yeah, I don't know. They've made a lot of bad calls on defense. I don't trust their ability to properly, address that hole like that. It's been it's been rough.
I think Turd is right here thinking about this too. Because I remember right after the draft, and you kind of hear this often, but the Jets genuinely seemed really excited about where they got Colby Barlow as a faller. So Turd says, I've heard if Barlow wasn't there, they would have done it, but they were high on Barlow was my understanding. And I do remember that conversation about the Winnipeg Jets were shocked. Barlow was at 18?
Yep.
So I could have seen, like, if he wasn't there, maybe it plays in. Maybe that was part of this conversation as well,
Very
which
possible.
is a bit of a tough look right now when looking at that, though he's starting to pick it up a bit lately.
Yeah, lately
You
he's been a
hope that
little bit better. It's too bad how that's kind of gone. I was excited at the Barlow pick when they made it, and it's too bad that it hasn't quite worked out that way, but hopefully he turns it around. You never know, but not looking great.
Yeah, some interesting discussions, some interesting dive backs into the rumor mill. I'm excited for the rumor mill to get going again because I think that's when I start to cook. I really enjoy transaction season, and it's just around the corner.
Yeah.
I want to see the opportunities this team has because despite this stretch, the one thing I'll say leaving the show tonight, despite this stretch, I still am eternally optimistic they figure this out at some point because I still look at this team and I still see avenues where this could work out and we could be awfully excited in April, May, potentially June. Now it's going to take this organization doing things that we haven't necessarily seen the organization doing, so it might be some misplaced optimism. But this still is a good hockey team with good pieces, with good prospects, with their picks and cap space.
Yeah,
It's been a tough slog.
Yeah,
it's been a real tough slog.
Oh my God,
and they've shown no signs of wanting to change certain things. And they've shown us the stubborn side of them again. And we should just believe it. And we should be pessimist about it. And I should come in here and just tell you guys that's how I feel. Like when I had the vent sesh a couple of games ago, that's genuinely how I feel about the Winnipeg Jets on most days. But I still believe Kevin Sholdayoff has had a good 3-year stretch here since Paul Maurice left. I do believe that. I do believe that this org is starting to realize that the window is closing, that this is an older team. I mean, the core guys are late 20s, early 30s. At some time, it's go time.
Yep.
And maybe if they bring in the right center, you could split up Mark Scheifele and Kyle Connor. I don't know. There's avenues where I can still believe this team can figure it out.
I think our best hope at this point is they go find a new number one center and Scheifele plays wing.
Yeah, that's an impossible one to find, though.
Yeah, no doubt.
But hey, we got 3 stars today, and we'll get out of here.
All right, let's hit it.
3 stars in this one. I'm going to go, like I said, I think it was a step forward. He looked better in my eyes. That line was the only line creating offensively. I'll go a 3rd star tonight. Mark Scheifele shaking off the injury bug.
There you go.
I'm going to go heroic effort on the game-winning goal. Played half the game. Called them out for whiffing on that Manitoba kid scoring, but it didn't count. Josh Morrissey puts in a big one, and despite playing that many minutes, has the effort to not only lead a breakaway, but stop up and get a pass over to Adam Lowry. Your best players need to be your best players in big moments, and Josh Morrissey was that to get the win. And then number 1, I'm going to give it to Gabe Vilardi, a guy that was disrupting that forecheck. He was physical out there, all around that net, both with his shot and his skill playmaking. And all of a sudden, honestly, DB makes me feel like shit again because I didn't even include Hellebuck. So we're going to bump Scheifele out for Hellebuck, actually, because I feel like a jackass right now.
All right. I'm going to go 3rd star, Jets video coach, Matt Prefontaine, for stealing that goal from the kid from Souris, Manitoba. That was absolutely harsh, but it had to happen. I'm sorry. He saw it, and he's good at those, man. Like, he fucking nails those all the time. So big shout out to Matt Prefontaine.
Matt Prefontaine might be the only person that understands goalie interference. That guy cooks every time he calls for one, man. You got to feel good about the replay. Like, I thought that should have counted. The way I see the game, I thought that should have counted for Buffalo. I would be feeling pretty ripped off for them. I thought
he impeded the leg. It was textbook.
I thought both goals should have counted. The way I see the game.
Yeah.
I thought it was funny because I thought both would get waved off the way I've seen some of these calls go.
Yeah.
And the Jets come out ahead on both replays. Unbelievable turn of events in this one. And Matt Prefontaine, great pull, Mikey. Great pull.
That's my 3rd star. Number 2, Josh Morrissey, that just for the play in overtime. Strictly just for that one in overtime. He's fucking just tired, and he's still able to get that puck up there. So Josh Morrissey makes that happen. And then number 1 star, I'm going to go good luck Gabe. Gabe Vilardi. I thought he drove that whole line tonight, and we've seen the games where he's engaged that the Jets just are a different team. So I hope those keep going, and that's my number 1 star.
All right. So thank you to the audience for tuning in this one. Shout out. I had a lot of fun, and I got to say, I was saving this for the end, and I got to find it here because there was some more inappropriate jokes after Matt Hyman's. I feel a little misled by the landing strip, but I will continue to watch anyways. I didn't want to interrupt the show. I felt like we'd gotten to a good point, but I got to shout out some things I was laughing at. Mikey, there was one point you were just talking, and I was sitting here just trying not to lose my shit. Tico Napoli had mentioned that we need a teaser sponsor now after that comment. Kevin Kowaluk had said, these guys don't beat around the bush. And Julian Labossiere had said, what bush, this ain't the 80s. So shout out to the chat for having a little after dark humor. We appreciate it. It definitely kept me on my toes today. And we will see you guys and gals Saturday, Sunday. We got a big week. Got a podcast coming out tomorrow, hour 20, on the state of the Winnipeg Jets and reinventing the Winnipeg Jets. We'll be back on the line trip Saturday, Sunday, and then we'll do another overview of the week ahead, probably for Monday. So stick with us here, and have a great night.
Right on. Good night, everybody.
Thank you, Kevin.